On our other channel, The Untold Past, we've looked at the Oubliette. This was one of the most feared torture chambers and dungeons that has ever been invented. An oubliette was simply a hole in the ground where a prisoner would be thrown inside of, and they had virtually no chance of escaping. Some of them were bottleneck shaped to prevent an escape, and also they derived from the French word to forget. Once you went down the oubliette, you were forgotten and other prisoners were left inside of the dungeon, with the remains of other prisoners who were unfortunate enough to have been in there. Prisoners also had to contend with rats and other disgusting aspects of torture, for example sewage flowing into the cell, and some oubliettes were so small that a prisoner would be forced into a sitting, standing or crouching position 24/7. However, on the flip side, there was part of a castle that was completely different. However, the two words do sound similar. The oubliette was a dungeon where you definitely did not want to be inside of, but what on the other hand was a gloriette. Remember to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. The gloriette is part of a castle or a palace that you wanted to be inside of. It's usually found in European palaces, but some do exist in England. One famous one was found inside of Corfe Castle, in which one of history's worst kings, John, expanded the castle complex. He had a gloriette added to the main keep at Corfe, where he entertained guests in lavish banquets and ceremonies. A gloriette was a building inside of a garden or a bailey that was raised and elevated around its surroundings. Its shape can be very different, and often in Europe they're seen in the form of a pavilion where entertainment can be held inside of. The most famous gloriette is found in Vienna at the Schönbrunner Palace Garden. It was built in 1775 and was seen as a focal point for the garden. It has been used as a festival hall and also a place where the wealthy would eat their dinner in complete luxury. The Emperor Franz Joseph I used it as a breakfast room, and on the roof is an observation platform that looks over the city of Vienna. During the Second World War it was destroyed in bombing raids, but was quickly restored a number of years later. The Gloriette at Corfe Castle is incredibly different to this. It takes the form today as a ruined building, in which most of it has fallen into a derelict state. There are the remains of a staircase, however this was a place in which King John aimed to entertain many of the barons in England. Ultimately, by spending huge sums of money on castles, creating things such as gloriettes, for very little purpose except extravagance, the barons turned against John and forced him into signing the Magna Carta, which limited his power as King of England. The gloriette at Corfe dates back to the 13th century and was the royal quarters of the king, and it had arch-shaped windows that looked out to the huge hill and offered beautiful views of the landscape. The construction of this new royal residence was part of the first phase of expansion at Corfe Castle that cost a huge sum of money for King John. The building of the gloriette was also coincided with the creation and expansion of defensive structures at the castle, including perimeter curtain walls that replaced wooden fences. The gloriette was different to a keep building, and it showed the new taste of the monarchy, and it took the shape of a Romanesque hall. At Corfe it shows us that King John wished to live inside of the castle at some point and for some days each year, and how he wished to have royal accommodation all over the country, not just in one specific palace or castle. It remained following King John's reign as the main royal residence at Corfe, and it was very lavish. The plan for the gloriette showed a structure based around a central court. In the east wing was the Great Hall, split into two spaces, with a south kitchen nearby, and also there were vaulted cellars underneath, presumably to store food. The entrance porch was to the north, and there were other rooms such as the King's Hall, where he would hold court, but there was also a chapel for private worship. John's gloriette at Corfe was one of a number of high-status buildings built across England, and many other buildings across Europe at the time became known as gloriettes. Across the continent, some of these were towers with domestic chambers, built around beautiful surroundings, such as spectacular gardens and fountains. Another gloriette was built at Leeds Castle, which was built during the reign of Edward I, who expanded the defences. He also added royal apartments in the form of a gloriette for himself and his queen to stay inside of. Gloriettes were spectacular buildings, and it's likely that inside of them were beautiful tapestries to adorn the walls, and they were made only really for show and for promoting the wealth of the castle's owner. Big state occasions were held inside of them, and the castle's owner could impress inside of a gloriette. Some were built as extensions to castles, but some were completely separate structures. So the Oubliette and Gloriette could not be further apart in their similarities. To be invited into a Gloriette would have meant you have been rubbing shoulders with royalty. However, the Oubliette meant you could literally be rubbing shoulders with rats inside of a dungeon in the ground. Interestingly, some castles out there do have a Gloriette and an Oubliette within the same curtain walls. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.